Welcome to JGTCR. I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the FIAT 500F. Let's get into it. This FIAT is just as painful to drive to begin with as it is rewarding when we get the flow and chop our lap time by more than 10 seconds. Yes, it's like pulling teeth, but somehow satisfying as well. The handling is almost non-existent, but if anything, it's soft and spongy. The steering is very sensitive since we are traveling at such low speeds, but overdoing the input is common. Be smooth and mild on steering inputs to maintain speed. The power available is a whopping 16 horsepower. So take it easy on the throttle. Seriously though, the approach is basically never lift off throttle. Keep the gas planted and add brake on top where needed. We will stay in 4th gear most of the time, dropping to 3rd when speed gets lower than 68 km per hour. And down to 2nd if we go below 44 km per hour. The power delivery is again non-existent. Any slipping or sliding is due to coming into turns well over speed. The brakes are rare to be used, but are spongy when we do. Most of the times we will just throw this FIAT at turns and let the speed wash off from the vehicle's resistance itself. Let's collect our time. "14 minutes, 32.1 seconds. And now, the race tune. Less is more when tuning this FIAT. We have to dull the inputs to make it more drivable. Without tuning, it turns too much and moves far too aggressively on track. Post-tuning, we have a much more malleable vehicle on our hands. The handling is mostly smooth, but the tail does like to have bouts of Skippy the Kangaroo activities when the tail becomes unsettled while turning. The steering is still a bit too sharp and could do with some dulling via less front camber, but it holds the road and guides the FIAT well as is. The power has 6x with modification, so it is a world apart from factory. However, it can feel lazy as we are running a huge turbo on a small engine. That being said, we are hauling donkey the whole time it's on boost. The power delivery is good for the most part, but it gets erratic when the car is destabilized. The basic rule is, if it's gripping, it's ripping, but if it's slipping, then it's dipping. The brakes do extremely well at slowing us down, but it's easy to overbrake, so use them sparingly. Let's collect our time. "8 minutes, 20.5 seconds. And now, the drift tune. Can the FIAT 500F drift? Yes. Should the FIAT 500F drift? Absolutely not. This definitely serves as a reminder, just because you can do something does not necessarily mean that you should do that something. This FIAT is in no way equipped to deal with what we try and put it through in the drift arena. The handling is floaty but does well guiding the 500F around the drift track. The steering works very well because there is not much strain on it. The power is ridiculously low and a major factor in why it can't drift well. But what is there does do its best to keep up with what we ask of it. The power delivery is again giving us all it's got, Captain, but it struggles with the task at hand. Overall, the Fiat 500F is a terrible drift car, but for those that like a bit of a challenge and to be able to say that they've done it, there you go. Drift Fiat life, bro. And now it's time for an engine swap. The Fiat 500F is a horrendous vehicle after doing the engine swap. It's wobbly-dobbly, sloppy-toppy, flicky-kicky, and lacks brakey-wakeys. The handling is all over the place. Gear changes can spear us off the track, and so can venturing too high in the revs. The steering works at times and is nowhere to be found at others. The power feels bogged down in the lower RPM and is highly erratic at higher RPM. 10,000 RPM seems to be where the chaos begins, so stay below this area to maintain control. Power delivery is a light switch, nothing down low and everything all together all at once up top. The brakes are an absolute joke. They only work 50% of the time. And if wheel spin is in effect, the brakes do nothing at all to slow us down. Let's collect our time. Nine minutes, 31.9 seconds. And now the race tune. This Fiat is an incredibly unstable car in almost every way. Without tuning, the nose lifts on throttle so we face the sky. The suspension is wobbly and flips the car on its roof at almost every turn, and the steering gets us throwing more roundhouse kicks than Bruce Lee in the Fist of Fury. Thankfully, tuning gets this little monster under control. However, it still has the ability to rip our faces off if we get too comfortable while driving it. It's not often we recommend brake bias adjustments on this channel, as it's usually a subjective setting, but here it is needed to stabilize the front end. So, use brake bias with 3 points towards the front. The handling is fairly stable as long as we keep it on the black stuff. Unfortunately, this Fiat is easy to unsettle, and even bumps, crests and dips on the road can cause issues, so use caution on uneven surfaces. The steering is just sharp enough to steer the car well, but dull enough that it does not start the car skipping around like a kangaroo. But at its limits, the steering can be a bit grippy and cause the Fiat to jump around like the House of Pain. The power is strange in many ways, but it does get us moving very quickly. The revs tend to stall on deceleration, so slowing down is a difficult task at times, as the lingering revs interfere with engine/compression braking. The power delivery is rather mild thanks to the nerfing of the diff and the tight suspension at the tail end, but it still can get out of hand at higher RPM. The secret to driving this tiny monster is throttle modulation and keeping revs reasonable. We need to be very smooth going on and off inputs, especially the throttle. RPM being too high causes understeer and destabilizes the rear. So it's best to only go flat out full throttle on dead straight sections of road. Being off throttle can also destabilize the rear of this Fiat, especially if we're backing off the gas hard. When coasting, it's best to maintain RPM with a light touch on the throttle to keep suspension settled and in place. The brakes are very hit and miss, especially at high RPM. Sometimes they don't seem to do anything at all. So pick early brake markers and hang on to those brakes a touch longer than we think is necessary. Braking and turning is also a no-no, so ensure to brake only in straight lines. Let's collect our time. 7 minutes, 1.6 seconds. And now the drift tune. The engine swap in this Fiat makes drift easier to initiate and maintain. The handling is very floaty in nature. The front end will bob about like a boat as we feed in our inputs. And fortunately for us, it will always feel light and breezy to control while drifting. The steering can seem a bit janky and rocks the front of the boat, however, it holds the road well. The power is ridiculous in this chassis and layout. Its high revs and peaky nature makes it seem more challenging than it actually is. The power delivery is good as long as we hold some revs and let the wheel speed catch up. So no shake and bake on this one. Backing off the gas completely or planting the foot on the gas can lead to issues. But if we are gentle, bringing revs to our desired RPM and hold it there, the Fiat responds in kind. This is a very strange and specific style of drift, but it works fairly well. That being said, it certainly isn't for everyone. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing!